Warning, my capture card and OBS fucking hate me.
Yeah, you could probably say that I was excited for Sonic Frontiers.
From the moment Sonic Frontiers was announced, my expectations were as volatile as the damn stock market. After the hit success of Sonic Colors and Generations, the expectations for the following decade of Sonic was through the roof, and to say that the results were not what the fans were expecting will only be covering half the Sonic the Hedgehog documentary. After a side quest of working for Nintendo, SEGA was finally free to start working on the next mainline Sonic game for all next-gen platforms, and when the game finally hit, fans realized that SEGA had more or less learned nothing from the phrase absolutely slaughtered by the internet. A game when delayed will never be as as Sonic Force. The game was incredibly half-baked, incomplete, and it felt like the possible passion that the game had was for naught, as they were not giving enough time to make the game as good as it could be, and instead could only manage to make a nostalgic cash grab. The Dragon Ball recap should by all means end there. However, SEGA simply didn't have enough money to wash their hands and instead decided to re-release Sonic Colors for modern consoles and finally get out of Wii jail. The only issue is, they somehow made it worse! The game was in a completely unacceptable state, not only for a re-release of a game that was by this point over a decade old, but also for a game released in the year 2021. But believe it or not, the Dragon Ball recap still doesn't end there! In the last episode of Dragon Ball Z, Sonic Origins, a compilation of the classic trilogy of Sonic games plus CD was released, and somehow, that also had its own share of issues. I want to quickly talk about the state of Sonic reviews, as all the way to the year of now, modern time, Sonic 06 keeps being brought onto a conversation 16 years after debuting, constantly being used as a way to quickly emphasize the stereotype of Sonic bad, but maybe this one good. While I believe it's fine to mention Sonic 06 when mentioning the games that immediately followed it, mentioning it on a review of a game that came 60 years after 06 has very little substance or relevance, as during that period, a bunch of games came out that have more relevance to the topic than Sonic 06 does. In summary, game journalists are like history teachers, because they sure fucking love bringing up the past. The reason of why I talked about Forces, Colors, and Origins was because they were some of the most recent entries in the series, as well as being the last 3 major releases in the past 5 years, and with how they came out, I feel like it's only fair to set the expectations accordingly. And so the day of release came. I was ecstatic, absolutely pumped to play the new Sonic game, and throughout most of the day I was finishing the true game of the year, Elden Ring, yeah! Oh, and then I picked up Frontiers and started playing it. And so, what did I think about Frontiers? Was it able to truly bring Sonic into a new direction? Was it the comeback that we've been waiting for? Well, I think I'll say it. I think it definitely was. Sonic Frontiers is an open zone game in which you explore the Starfall Islands, a series of islands that Tails, Amy, and Sonic found as a result of Chaos Emerald readings appearing close to the location. However, before they can land the tornado, they all get sucked into cyberspace, from which only Sonic managed to escape from. Confused as to what just happened, a mysterious voice then tells him his objective: find the emeralds, destroy the Titans, and tear down the wall between dimensions. And from there, the game begins. So the game is an open zone, not exactly open world. If I had to come up with a comparison, it would probably be like how Pokemon Legends Arceus was earlier this year, which had a bunch of huge areas to explore and secrets to find. It's also very similar to how Mario Odyssey did its levels as well, huge open playgrounds where you can do whatever you want as long as you get the moons. So the question arises, what do you do in these levels?
Play the heat of the universe?
Okay, so there's a list of different stuff to get. The main collectibles will be the memory tokens, little trinkets scattered about in the world that you need to find in order to rescue Amy, Knuckles, and Tails in their respective islands, as well as to progress to the main story. These are the most obvious similarity to Super Mario Odyssey, as just like in that game, there's a hell of a lot of these. Another objective is to collect the Chaos Emeralds to fight these huge colossal beasts which absolutely kick Sonic's ass upon first encountering them. However, to get to the emeralds, you will need to access the cyberspace levels to get the bulk keys. However, there's more. You need to get into the levels by using gears that you get by fighting enemies. However, we're not done, as you also have the fruits of power and defense that raise those stats respectively. They're not really required to beat the main game, however it's probably nice that you get them. Apart from that, you also need to rescue the Coco, which are the inhabitants of the island, and bring them to one of the elders to increase your speed and maximum amount of rings that you can carry. Everything that I just mentioned will make up the map of Sonic Frontiers, and your first stop may be...
the hell kind of shopping list is this?
All around the island, multiple items will be located for you to grab them, and at first it may look like the items are placed with no rhyme or reason. The sentence is over. The thing is, even though they're placed randomly, they're still a lot of fun to collect. A lot of these items require you to play mini obstacle courses to get, and they are often very fun as Sonic moves very fluently in the game. This is in my opinion one of the best controlling Sonics from the boost formula. Sure as hell beats the automated garbage that Forces brought.
Half the time I wasn't even playing the game!
Sonic has a lot of new moves that will benefit him throughout the campaign, both in movement and in offense. My favorite part about the game was getting Sonic to 400 rings as it unlocks his fastest speed, and from there you go ham! Running around the islands like it's nobody's business. It's so fun. It gets the goopy goblin gamer brain of mine ready to go! Additionally, Sonic also has the Psy Loop, or whatever the hell it was called, and that ability allows Sonic to solve puzzles, collect rings and other items, and help out Sonic in battle. Speaking of which,
Say goodbye to the old and say hello to the new.
the combat is really good, and I mean really good. Like Psychonauts 2 levels of good. And let me give you another history lesson. 3D platformers suck ass at doing actual engaging combat. Sonic has a lot of moves that make combat engaging, and they all take advantage of his natural abilities instead of me having to open up a combo list. I never had an issue with the Warhawk and Unleashed. I feel like the fact that Unleashed is my favorite Sonic game is evidence enough. However, whenever the Warhawk came up, I always kind of wished that it was a bit faster. What I'm saying is that I wished it was Devil May Hedgehog. But what about the Cyberspace levels? Well, right now I don't have enough gears, but let me talk to you about the fishing minigame. That's right, baby, there's a fishing minigame that's pretty good. The best part is that you can just buy a bunch of the items in here, and there's even loan references. This is the game of the year, that's right, fuck you, Elden Ring!
Wait a minute, I can't eat fish.
When it comes to the actual Cyberspace levels, they are these recreations of prior Sonic levels from all over Sonic's history, and because I play much more Sonic than I would like to admit, any level from Adventure 2, Unleashed, and Generations I probably immediately recognized. Because the levels are based on prior levels, that means that they are pretty fun. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that they are, in my opinion, the worst part of the game. Gameplay wise at least. See, I'm mixed with how Sonic moves so slowly. Makes some levels feel less dynamic, like I'm playing on baby mode, and it's levels like 2D levels oddly enough where you notice this a lot. When it comes to 3D levels, I oddly enough didn't mind the slow nature but more so the floaty nature of Sonic. Although as I said, I'm mixed with how I feel about them. Sometimes it doesn't matter, sometimes it does. I think it probably depends on the level and me just getting used to them. What I don't want to get used to, however, is the level themes, because we are again using Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a city level on a Sonic game. If I had to do a bingo card, this would be the 3 point. I forgave it in Generations and Mania because they were good games and they made sense. It made less sense in Generation and I didn't forgive it there. And now it makes about 60% sense. Although I'd still rather them not be as used as they are. There are story reasons for why the levels are like this. However, I feel like they didn't go all the way. They should have reused more themes and not give us 4. Count them! 4 themes for the entire goddamn game! For over 30 levels! You know what we coulda have? That's right, we coulda have not Green Hill, we coulda have Emerald Hill, dammit! Man, forget the teacher analogy for game journalists. SEGA is a better history teacher by a mile because everything they talk about is only the past! I did really like the visual presentation of the Cyberspace levels, the entire game as a whole really. One of the biggest problems with Forces was that it was visually very boring, the presentation was boring, the animations were boring, and by extension that also meant that the cutscenes were extremely boring. Everything the characters did was to stand around, barely moving, and when they did move, it just wasn't interesting. There was no flair, no sound. And when compared to cutscenes from games like Heroes with cutscenes that felt much more alive, I hope that you can see where I'm coming from when criticizing Forces, and I hope you can also see where I'm coming from when praising Frontiers. They fixed every problem that I had with the visual department. First of all, I don't know if the game has idle animations, but that's the least of my worries. The cutscenes are fun. The characters have personalities. I don't need to spell it out for you that characters like Knuckles is like the strong guy of the group because a cutscene shows you that perfectly. Show, don't tell. That's good storytelling, dammit. There's substance, there's style, and that's amplified by the fact that the game looks pretty good. Besides the copious amounts of popping. I'm right in front of you, have some decency! I will say that overall the music was good. It was good. but not as good as prior entries. I think it definitely has to do with the fact that most open world and so on type of games mostly try to stick with ambient music more than video gaming music as a whole. However, not having the fire Sonic soundtracks playing at all times was sorely missed. And while there is more traditional Sonic music of that sort in the Cyberspace levels, because they all have a similar style, they did kind of blend in a bunch of times. Like Sonic's nickname at this point is basically, the game is probably bad but the music is better than sex, so to see that this music is in fact not better than sex, it's a bit disappointing. Okay, let me rephrase a bit. The Sonic soundtracks I think of are a bit like... But Frontiers is a bit more like... Ah, but I forgot to mention the boss teams. The aspect I was most impressed by was, surprisingly enough, the actually good story! Listen, every Sonic video is nearly a cardboard copy of the last, meaning that most of the things that I'm going to speak about are the same points of contention and whatnot. Other people have probably mentioned this before, yada yada yada. Here's the summary version on screen. SEGA brought E.M. Flynn, known for his work in the comics, to help out with the writing. And it shows. The story is enjoyable from beginning to end, and it brings some lore elements into the table, which... correct me if I'm wrong, but not since Unleashed has the lore of the series been expanded upon quite like this, and to have a story where the characters not only develop, but also a story that talks about the creation of the Master Emerald, well, no, my bad, not the Master Emerald, but the normal emeralds, still about the emeralds. Sign me up! Actual lore in a Sonic game? Am I playing a real game or am I playing a fan gaming here? The game has a lot of good character moments, so even when Sonic is the only playable character, it's not an issue, because the rest of them have their moment to shine, and it's so good! The best character is easily Eggman though. He is mostly the best character in most things Sonic at this point, and for the few things that I've seen in the comics, he's even better there, so overall, Eggman fans, be always winning.
What the hell? This game is good?
I am telling you, it is genuinely great being able to have a Sonic game, a 3D Sonic game that a lot of people enjoy. It is great seeing Sonic succeed in so many different aspects. The movie was great, Prime looks like it'll be pretty good as well, and if Frontiers is anything to go by, Sonic is honestly looking better than ever. Frontiers is honestly just the beginning. The brakes are off, the rockly weights, they're off, threw them into the air, and all that is left is for SEGA to do, don't crash along the way, please. Personally, the thing that I want to see for the next Sonic entry would be like re-explore the Heroes concept where you have 3 playable characters. I would really love to have a Tails and Knuckles playstyle in 3D, especially with the open zone format. I feel like they would work perfectly as a Sonic game. That sounded weird, but that's just my opinion. Whatever they have in store, I will surely as hell follow. If you want to know where I would put Sonic Frontiers when talking about other Sonic games, I'll probably put it right here in my Sonic tier list. The future of Sonic is very bright. Let's just hope that it stays that way for at least another 2 years.